G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome everyone. Today we're breaking from the usual format and speaking with a subject matter expert on referrals. I'm interviewing Stacey Brown Randall from Growth by Referrals, based in beautiful Charlotte, North Carolina. Thanks for your time today, Stacey.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So tell our audience a bit about your background and experience.
You know, it's interesting. People always ask me, they're like, okay, so you have this idea of referrals and how you get them, and you're contrarian to what most people teach. Like, did you just wake up with that idea one day? And I would love to be like, yes, I got hit with a stroke of brilliance and I've built a whole company around it. But actually, everything I've learned come from the School of Hard Knocks. I actually had a business. It was an HR consulting firm. Had it for 4 years, didn't quite make it to the 5-year mark before that business failed. And I found myself back in corporate America, which is really hard to do once you've tasted the freedom of the entrepreneurial life.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's the toughest thing ever. And I remember I would be driving to work and I would walk across the lobby and my heels would click on the marble and it would jolt me awake. And I would say to myself, how did I get to work today? How many red lights did I hit? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I wouldn't always remember my commutes to the office because I was kind of out of it. But, it's one of those things where the business failed. I had to do what I had to do, right? I had to go back to corporate America, got a job. I was there for almost 18 months before I kind of planned my escape route, started a second business, which is actually a productivity and business coaching practice. And it was all about, okay, first business failed. Shouldn't have, but it did. What lessons can I learn? And then applied those, of course, to the second business as I was getting it started. And really, my entrepreneurial journey started early on, young for me. I actually come from a family of entrepreneurs. They're the crazy kind, though, because most of them own restaurants. And I think you're crazy to own a restaurant,
Absolutely.
but I can say that, right?
Very
Because
hard.
I am the granddaughter, daughter, sister, wife, and niece of restaurant business owners. So I'm allowed to say that they're crazy.
Yeah.
So it's, I've always kind of knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, got out of college, did the typical corporate thing. And then of course, started that first business that failed 4 years later, back in corporate America, then back out to building a business and found some great success with how I went about building that coaching practice. And it was through referrals. And what I realized, it was through referrals I wasn't asking for, which made my methodology completely different than how everybody else was teaching it. And so I just did a pivot in the business a couple of years ago to solely focus on teaching people how to generate referrals without asking. And we've been doing this now for 8 years.
Great. So is that 8 years ago you started the coaching business, or 8 years ago you pivoted?
So 8 years ago, we started the coaching business, and it was within the first year of the coaching business that I was teaching my coaching clients this methodology. Now, of course, we have an online program and a VIP option that also gives people the option to work with me, but we're in 10 different countries all around the world.
Great. So before we move on to talking more about referrals, how can people get in touch with you? Where's the best place for them to go?
Yeah, so home base is going to be the website, stacybrownrandall.com, and Stacey is spelled with an E. There's lots of ways to spell it, but Stacey is spelled with an E. That's always a great home base place. I have a book you can find on Amazon or in your local bookstore, Generating Business Referrals Without Asking. I've got a podcast. Just kind of depends on how you like to consume your information. We've got a lot of platforms out there for how we provide it.
Great. And outline for the audience referrals and speak a little bit about your the book and also the techniques you educate people with in this area of business.
Yeah, most of the time when people have been taught about referrals or they've heard about referrals or they've been through a sales training or a program or they've read articles about it, they're told that if they want referrals, there's a couple of main ways to get them. And those are the only ways to get them. And if you won't follow those ways, then you just don't get them. The reality of it is that's just not true. But those old school ways of what I call old school referral triggers are typically that you have to ask. If you want a referral, you have to ask for it. Or you're told that you have to pay. If you want referrals, you got to pay commission, you got to do a kickback, you got to be willing to pay for that referral. Or you've been taught that if you want referrals, you have to be overly promotional or really gimmicky and kind of cheesy. And then from those perspectives, most of the time people are like, yeah, but those don't work for me. I'm not interested in asking. And I either in my industry won't allow me to pay, or that's just not how I want to do it. And then of course, I don't want to show up in the marketplace being overly gimmicky and promotional, which for the longest time, that's all there was. We were left with, well, this is it. This is what you get. And if you won't do it, then you don't get referrals. And I found myself faced with that same information. When my first business failed and I was starting my second one, I was like, okay, how did I generate clients in my first business? And not one came by referral.
Right.
And which meant I hustled entirely too hard for every client that I did close. It was a lot of networking.
Yep.
And, I'm a mom of 3 kids. Like, I don't have infinite amounts of time to be spending at networking, coffee meetings, rubber chicken dinners, things like that. And so for me, it was like, okay, how am I going to make this business successful? I don't want another failure, but I can't hustle as hard as I did the first go round. And I, like everybody else, was like, okay, well, then I'm going to get referrals. And then realized, well, I don't really know how to do that because obviously I didn't get any in the first business. And so from there, I was like, well, let's see if I can get it and not follow the advice of all the experts, because I don't like that advice. It feels uncomfortable and desperate to be asking or paying. And I just don't want to show up in the marketplace being seen as overly promotional and gimmicky. That's not how I want to be seen. And so I just guinea pigged on my business. I was like, okay, let's figure out how we can get some clients. And I did. I got 112 referrals in my first year as a productivity and business coach. And it was very quickly after that, my clients were like, okay, how are you growing so fast? And I was like, oh, I'm getting all these referrals and it's great. And they would say, okay, thanks so much for teaching us your productivity tips, but we really want to learn your referral strategy. And it was in that moment of being forced to teach my clients what I was doing that I refined it down to a process.
Yep.
And that's what I have in the book, Generating Business Referrals Without Asking. We talk about that process, the why you don't ask and how you're supposed to look at referrals. And then, of course, the process to go about generating them without asking. And that's really just become the mission, is just more people understanding that you can grow your small business from a referral perspective and have consistency and do it differently than you've probably been taught for decades and decades.
Great. And can you outline maybe just the high level steps in that process for the audience?
Yeah. So number one, most important is you need to know who refers you. So step one, I always tell folks, it's the least sexy step. Like it's data diving into your business and figuring out who's referred you in the past. I find the easiest way to do that is actually by looking at your list of clients and prospects and figuring out, if you don't have that tracked, where they came from. So go back a couple of years, pull a couple of years of data of your clients and your prospects, and what was the source? Where did they come from? Those that were actually referred to you would mean that they were referred by a human. So you're not referred by your chamber of commerce. You're not referred by your BNI group or your leads group. You're referred by somebody in those groups. And so it's important for you to recognize who's the human that's actually been referring you. And once you capture those names, then you have a starting point. And really what happens next is, once you've identified your referral sources, it's all about you making a conscious decision to be consistent and how you decide to strengthen the relationship with those referral sources. And the way I teach it is, it's a referral plan that you'll put in place, and you'll do, so many touch points in a year. And it's not a daily thing, not a weekly thing. It's not even a monthly thing, but you'll do a series of touch points that allow you to be memorable and meaningful. That'll also allow you to stay top of mind. But those opportunities, those outreaches, give us an opportunity to plant referral seeds, which gives people a way to think about us. Because what I teach my students is that we're going to take care of our referral sources. And why shouldn't we? They take care of us by sending us the easiest clients to get in the world, right? So their holy grail prospects are the ones that's referred to you. And so we want to take care of them for doing that. And if we can impact how they feel about us, and that means they know that we care and we're thankful for those referrals. If we can impact how they feel about us, we can then direct how they think about us. And then we use the language piece to really kind of drive home the referral seeds and planting those referral seeds and doing it in a way that always honors the relationship and respects the relationship. And then, after you've identified your referral sources, you have your plan in place, you know the language you're using, you know how to follow up with a thank you. At the end of the day, the next thing you need to do, you got to create it into a process or a system. Because as business owners, if we don't have it as a process or a system, or at least on the calendar or on the task list, let's be honest, it's not happening.
No.
And so we call it processitizing it. I recognize it's probably not a word, but we just like it. We call it processitizing it inside the program, where we're really just making sure whatever we say we're going to do over the course of that year to do the outreach to our referral sources actually happens.
So important, that professional image, whether you are in the professional services space or not, if you're selling widgets, but that mantra of doing everything you say you're going to do, and obviously you don't need to do everything. You say, no, I don't have time, or it's not relevant to me, but anything you do commit to, you should follow through. By having a good system to track what you've said I will go and do is very, very valuable. I've seen plenty of professional reputations ruined because people become known to only do, say, half of the things they've said or committed to doing. And then people start to wonder, well, if they're not going to get back to me on that one thing they said they would send through last week, just an article, really quick email, what other things are they going to let me down on?
Yeah, the trust factor is so critical in business, just with our clients and how it builds our reputation, but it's also just as critical with the relationship we have with our referral sources.
Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, trust is, you can lose it quickly and it takes a long time to earn it back, right? We all know that. And I think it's one of those things we have to pay attention to is, from the client experience perspective, it's always important to manage expectations of your clients so you can maintain trust. And with our referral sources, it's making sure that we're taking care of them so we can continue to maintain their trust as well.
Yeah, there's a great Ernest Hemingway quote: the best way to find out if you can trust somebody is to trust them.
Trust them until you can't, right?
That's it. And clearly referrals is important when growing a small business because it's a really low cost, in the grand scheme of things, way to attract and land good clients. Any other reasons why you would say that referrals are important and part of the marketing landscape for a small business?
Most importantly, I think people recognize that a referred prospect is typically easier to close, quicker to close, less price sensitive. And it's just the type of folks who show up already trusting you. So they're typically ready to go. But I do think it's important that people recognize what a referred prospect means.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of people will come to me and they'll be like, hey, I got this referral. And then they'll tell me about it. And I'm like, that's not a referral. That's an introduction.
Yep.
Or that's word of mouth buzz. I know it feels like a referral, but it's not. And the truth is understanding a referral for your business means two main things. Number one, the prospect was connected to you by a referral source because it's within that connection that who the prospect is, right? But also, which means it puts you in the driver's seat of following up with them, but also that's where the trust is transferred again, right? So the referral source may have a conversation with that prospect and they may say, Troy's your guy.
Yep.
But it's when they put it in writing in the email and connect that prospect to you that the prospect is reminded, oh yeah, Troy's my guy.
Yep.
So from that perspective, it's really important that personal connection is happening. And like 95% of the time, that's going to be over email. It can happen over a group text thread. And of course, when we ever go back in group settings, right, it can definitely happen if all parties are present at an event. But truly, that trust is transferred when there's a personal connection. So it's usually the email sent by the referral source. You're copied on it as the solution provider. And then, of course, the prospects on it as well. But the second most important thing in that moment is the need has to be identified. The prospect needs to know they are the prospect. They need to be in buyer's mentality mode. That's why they're willing to meet with you, right? Or that's why they're willing to meet with me is they're like, oh, yes, I need to grow my business. I'd like it to be a little bit easier. I understand Stacey does that with referrals without asking. I trust Troy because Troy's connecting us.
Yep.
I want to have a conversation with Stacey. I mean, the reason why a referred prospect shows up like ready to go, easier to close, quicker to close, less price sensitive is because those two things exist. They're being personally connected to you through someone they trust and they know they have a need and that's why they're willing to have a conversation with you. And so I think recognizing what a referral is when it shows up is really valuable for a business owner because someone saying, hey, Troy, I was talking about you the other day to one of my clients, absolutely needs to hire you. Don't worry, he'll follow up.
Mm-hmm.
You're left being like, well, who's he?
Yep.
Right? Who's this client that you're talking about? You're not in the driver's seat. And I think that's a hard place for people to be, to recognize, yeah, it may feel like like I'm giving you a referral, but actually all I did was give you word of mouth buzz because I didn't connect you, but we know somebody out there needs you. And so it's recognizing what a true referral is important.
Yeah, I love that phrase you've just used, transfer of trust, and it's hugely, hugely powerful. I get hit up all the time. People ring me, I need a HR consultant, we're having this issue, etc. Who do you trust or who would you recommend? And it's really, really powerful to then just send that email, they're connected and off they go. And most of the times that business partnership takes off.
Yeah, that transfer of trust is, so very important to making everything easier.
And do you have any examples of how powerful referrals have been with some of the businesses you've worked with?
Yeah, absolutely. This isn't really industry specific in terms of having success, but the way I teach it, there are a few specific industries that I really focus on. And what they all have in common are typically the decision to hire that business is not one that's made lightly. So it's not like, am I going to buy my shoes from Amazon or Zappos? Like, it's
Yeah.
not like that type of dollar amount, right? It's much more like the financial advisor, the attorney, the
Mm.
CPA, the interior designer, the real estate agent, right? That business coach or consultant that's got a pretty hefty retainer fee. Like, it's the idea that I need to trust somebody else's opinion before I make this investment. And that's an important kind of thing to note, the way I talk about then the results that some of my
Mhm.
clients have had in the Growth by Referrals program. So, for somebody, it very well could be, let's talk about, I've got an interior designer who got a handful of referrals a year, never really got more than that, and then started thinking about referrals differently, followed the process, and got 14 in her first year. And most of that year was during COVID. And
Wow.
a lot of her friends that are also in the design space are not getting referrals, right? Or like the financial advisor who would got about 3 or 4 referrals a year. And his first year following the program got 15, and his second year got 17. And he's now in his third year following the program. And he can see, right, that consistency of following the plan and taking care of his referral sources paying off. For some of these folks, like I have one client that's a B2B, like lead generation type consulting company, and they would get just a handful of referrals a year, and in their first year with me they got 36 referrals. And one time I went back and I was like, I'm just curious, what is the ROI on
Mhm.
36 referrals based on learning through my methodology? And now here they are in their second or third year, they're getting about 5 referrals a month, so they're even growing past that. Well, the average client that they would close would be about 20 grand.
Jeez. Wow.
So getting 36 of those referred clients. And of course, they're not closing all of them. Most of us never do, but even closing half of them, right? I mean, we're talking well over 6 figures in terms of revenue generation by learning a methodology that is way easier than a lot of the other sales tactics that we do. So it just kind of depends what you're looking for. I mean, I have people who come in and they're like, I only need 10 to 15 referrals a year. And then I have another student who came in first year of the program, 347 off
Wow.
of usually getting 40 in a year. So it kind of also depends on your framework, your how you're set up, your model, right, and what it looks like for you to scale.
And I'm guessing that when people follow the program and implement this successfully, then referrals take up a huge portion of the sales, the marketing activity, and your budget, obviously, which will decrease because you don't need to spend it on other more traditional types of marketing.
Yeah, definitely you're going to start saving money from that perspective. But also, I have a lot of my clients that come into the program that they operate even their referral strategy on a shoestring budget.
Yep.
So it's not like they're outlaying thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for a year. I have some who do it on hundreds.
Yep.
And so it can definitely be very cost effective. Ultimately, though, what you're doing is you're building and strengthening a relationship with your referral sources. And so that doesn't need to be overly complicated, and it's not cold, right? So we're not trying to throw a bunch of stuff up on the wall to see what sticks. We know who these people are. It's a matter of us taking better care of them and using the right language with them so that we can get more referrals from them. And of course, there are some who are like, well, Stacey, I don't have enough referral sources. And so, of course, then they have to learn the process to be able to turn their clients and contacts into referral sources as well. But yes, I mean, from a perspective of what it does for your budget, it definitely decreases the amount of money you're going to spend.
Be the change you want to see in your business. Become more productive and less stressed with our free Transform Your Performance online course. Once you see the benefits, put your entire team through the course at no cost. We start out by telling you the secret to guaranteed success, then over 100 lessons help you be more focused, present, productive, and feel more in control about work. growasmallbusiness.com. Maybe talk a little bit about the course. How long does it take someone to go through? And, is there other support around that, like an online community, whether it's a Facebook group or you have regular webinars, etc.?
Yeah, so it's called Growth by Referrals, and it is an online program. There is also the VIP level, so you have 2 levels to choose from. The online program is supported through the independent study level, which is really like the do-it-yourself, right? You're
Yep.
going to go through the 6 module courses. They're all videos. They're broken down into mini lessons. You're going to get all the templates, all the checklists, all the worksheets, all the scripts, and we have dozens and dozens of scripts inside the program. You're going to get everything you need to go through and build out your referral plan and identify your referral sources and start executing. And then we actually follow along within the online program where we're tracking your results with you like every 3 months. So we know we're getting the ROI. And then I personally review all of the referral plans that are uploaded. So the students who go through it, well, we call them students, they're clients, but the clients who go through it, they know they're headed in the right direction before they ever start executing on that plan. But you can get through the program in like half a day. Like it's not going to take you that long to watch it and then do the work and upload it so that you're headed in the right direction. And so, that's going to take you, and most people are executing on it within the first 30 days. That's obviously our goal, is to get people executing on it. There's some things we tell you have to do, and then some things you're going to create for yourself, which is really helpful for folks. But, it's those 6 modules. Now we have the VIP option. It's like, hey, you can get the online, but then you can also work with me one-on-one for a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to, in some cases, we're going to move faster, but in a lot of cases, I'm going to hold you accountable.
Yep.
And people are looking for that accountability piece. And of course, both are supported with a Facebook group that's for the students only, or the clients only in the program, where they can go and ask questions and get feedbacks. And I do additional value added learning in there as well. But I would say the real power behind the program is that it's not like the typical online program where you do it and then you wonder if you're doing it right. I'm very hands-on in making sure you do it right, because I know poorly executed or a poorly built plan is not going to get you anywhere.
Yep.
So I think that feedback piece makes it different from that perspective. And the cool thing about the program is I need you to go through it once. I need you to build your plan, and then you have lifetime access, because I want you doing this every year. You don't need to go back to the program every year. You need to build your plan the second, the third, and the fourth year. And then we have other things that come along to support you in your second year and beyond.
Great. And one thing you think small business owners do really poorly in this area of referrals?
I think that if they have always been taught you have to ask for referrals and they don't want to do it, they actually hide from them. And they just think to themselves, okay, I'm not going to ask, so that just means I don't get any. And if I get some, great, we'll just consider it a blessing. It'll be awesome that it showed up, and woohoo, I got a referral. But they don't think they can put a strategy behind it, that where they can actually have a little bit more of in control, be a little bit more in control of what it looks like to start generating referrals. And so that's the first thing, is they just don't know that there's another way. So their mindset is a little off in terms of what it could look like. And the second thing is I always know that if I can get a business owner to go through the process of identifying their referral sources, most people will tell you it's a very empowering lesson and exercise that they go through in their business, because it tells them if they have enough referral sources, but also where their clients are coming from just in general, as to what other prospecting and marketing tactics are working. So it's typically a very eye-opening experience for folks. And I always laugh when someone's like, I should have done this years ago. And I'm like, I know, where were you? We were here. Like, you should have done this years ago, because it's just so powerful.
And any other professional development resources around this area that you'd recommend, books or, people to anything else that the audience should look into?
It's interesting. I talk about everything we're having the conversation around today based on the fact that you are actually referable.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is a disclaimer that I probably should start with, in terms of, I'm going to teach what I teach in my Growth by Referrals program because I'm making the assumption you're referable.
Yep.
But if you're not, getting referable is really, really important. And I have a program called Sticky Client Experience, where I teach people how to create a client experience for small business owners. But there are also a lot of resources out there that people can look into about how do you create those raving fans? How do you create a process-based client experience? What does that look like? Because the truth is, you have to be referable first before you can actually start receiving referrals.
Totally agree. That customer experience is so important. There's no point marketing a shit product. It's only going to fail faster. So, and for me, customer experience is a part of marketing, and so important. Any marketeers out there that you'd recommend the audience to follow, or like Seth Godin or anyone like that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm always a big fan of John Jantz from Duct Tape Marketing.
Oh, yeah.
I think he does a great job. I mean, there's probably more that if I had thought through that question, I would have more resources to provide. But yeah, so I'm a big fan of his. I mean, I think he does great work. I also really love, it's not marketing specific, but I really love Profit First as a model for how to kind of manage the small business cash flow and revenue and profit, and how you kind of think about your finances. And then from a process perspective, E-Myth. I think that's a great book by Michael Gerber. Michael
Gerber, absolute classics, my favorite book, and the one I recommend people read first before starting or growing a business. And John Jantz, I'm pretty sure I used to listen to his podcast years ago. He was really good. duct tape marketing.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember my husband has owned a couple of businesses. And when he was starting his second one with his business partner, I told him, I was like, you need to go read. I was telling his business partner, Tyler, I was like, you need to go read E-Myth Revisited. Please go read that book. Mm-hmm. And he didn't, right? I mean, because not everybody takes all the advice they should. Yep. And it was probably like a year or 2 years later, he actually sat down and read the book. He goes, oh, now I know why Stacey wanted me to read E-Myth before we started this business together. It's
the same. When I read it, I was 5 years or so into owning and running, growing small businesses, and it just slapped me in the face. It's like, you're reading it and this is all common sense, but then you turn around and look at my businesses and they weren't common practice.
So I think it's the same thing with Profit First, right? It is actually, when you read the book, you're like, this is pretty common sense, but we're not doing it.
All right, Stacey, on our final few questions, what do you think is the hardest thing when it comes to referrals for a small business?
I think the hardest thing is deciding to be intentional about having a referral plan, because the way that I teach it is I need you to take referrals out of prospecting and out of marketing. Your sales or business development strategy is a 3-legged stool, not a 2-legged stool, which means I need you to have your prospecting. I need you to have your marketing, but I also need you to take referrals out and create it and think about it like its own standalone leg to the stool. I think that's overwhelming sometimes for small business owners when they first hear it, but when they realize that third leg can then become the biggest piece of the pie and the easiest way to grow your business, they usually get on board.
And final, my favorite question, what's the one thing you would say to a small business owner starting out in their growth journey on day one?
Oh my gosh, track and measure.
Yep.
I think it's just so important to make sure that you're actually setting up processes and tracking what's happening in your business and then measuring your results, because creating that practice from day one will make it easier for you to do that when you really need it, when you're a couple years in or 5 years in or 10 years in, and you're wondering how things are working and how things are happening. And then you have to go back and reverse engineer to figure out how all the things are working. If you just get into the habit of that tracking and measuring and creating processes from the beginning, your life will be so much easier.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thanks for your time today, Stacey. I think the audience got a lot of value out of what we've discussed today, and it's a really interesting and poignant topic, referrals for small businesses. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
That's it. Thanks for listening. Please leave a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. It means more small business owners will find our cast and help people with their business growth journey.